Sport had always just been sport. The game had just been the game. The look of sport had always just been the look of sport. Until it wasn't anymore. There was a moment on the timeline of modern sport when everything changed. A few talented and passionate designers were brought together with one mission: to change the look, feel, and performance of sport forever. What started as a ripple in the early 1990s has served as the catalyst for the international revolution in sports branding, uniform design, and performance innovation that continues to accelerate today. This is the origin story of Nike Team Sports, as told by the designers, creators, and innovators who made it happen. This is the Designasty.
Welcome to the Designasty. I'm Ken Black. Today, we get the full story of Drake Ramberg, a 30-year Nike veteran whose fingerprints are all over the game of global football. In the early 90s, Drake set up Nike's very first European product graphic design art department, creating iconic kits for some of the world's biggest soccer clubs, including his beloved Arsenal. He was the mind and the designer behind Nigeria's kit when they shocked the world and won Olympic gold. Later, Drake returned stateside to join Nike Team Sports in the US before stepping into design leadership, guiding a new generation of designers as they chased their own path through Nike. This is the story of a designer who helped shape football's global identity and left a lasting legacy on both sides of the ocean. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation. Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, good to be back. That was fun doing the first episode, and looking forward to this another chat about the olden days. For those people that find this interesting, looking forward to the conversation today.
Yeah, well, today is your story, buddy. It's all about you. So, like, we could look at this as design therapy, whatever the case may be. I'm gonna try to extract some nuggets from you about your journey, because the question of how did you go from a kid who was an athlete and an artist to becoming a Nike OG, and what are those key moments along the way? Sound all right?
Sounds good. It's after this, I might need to take some Tylenol. my brain's going to be just like, I remember all those days, but
it's one, trauma of the old days, but then two is also like you just don't really get a chance to look back on and talk about what you want, because your kids are like, yeah, okay, Dad, I know you did all that stuff. That's good. I've heard all those stories. And then other times you feel like, oh, I don't want to impose my story on others. But what you've lived and the path that you've followed from a career and an artist and a sports fanatic perspective is interesting, and it's informative. I think it's inspiring to a lot of people. So love to get into it. So let's start and let's go way back. Let's start. Like, where did you grow up? What were your early days like?
All right. How long we got? No. I grew up, I was born in Portland, and my brother and sister and my family, we lived around Oregon, and eventually landed in Tigard, where I went to junior high and high school, which is a suburb of Portland, Oregon.
It's awesome. And, Jake, do you know we raised our kids in Tigard?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that you lived over there off of Gardy or something, right?
Yeah, our kids went to Fowler and all graduated from Tigard High School. So it's like the path. You cut a path that others are following. So there you go.
Oh my God. Yeah, so went to Tigard High School, and then all along the way, I was always drawing. Since my parents were in working in schools, my dad was a teacher, my mom was a teacher's assistant. We always had a lot of art supplies around, and it gave us something to do. A lot of rainy days in Oregon, especially from the fall and winter, and so that was my calling. And what did I draw? I drew athletes and football helmets and football uniforms, and just, I love sports, and I grew up a Raider fan and a Blazers fan. The Blazers won the NBA championship in 77, and the Timbers were starting in around 77, 78, And so, yeah, those are my sports. Those were my teams, and grew up watching them and loving them. And I was playing soccer, playing basketball, and loving art. So,
Awesome.
got a degree.
Do you still have any of those? Do you still have any of those old?
Oh yeah. I don't know if you want me to. Maybe I'll share them and we can kind of intersperse them in here. But yeah,
Yeah.
I loved doing like caricatures of Bill Walton and Maurice
Yeah.
Lucas and those guys of that era and a lot of the Timbers players. But that's kind of how it started. And so by the time I graduated from Portland State with a fine art degree, I was pretty poised to probably ready to go to Nike because fortunately they were in the next suburb over from Tigard was Beaverton, and so at the time they weren't on their world headquarters yet. We were just spread out around the Beaverton area, different buildings. But I joined them in '86 as a freelancer, and then '87 got hired on, and it was just the beautiful kind of connection between my love of sport and art and design and what they were looking for in the early days as they needed graphic designers to work in
Yeah.
apparel.
That's awesome. Did you at Portland State? I think we talked before. I think you said you graduated with a fine art degree. Was there graphic design as part of that, or how did you make the leap? Like illustrator, fine art, graphic design. Like how'd you build your book and stuff?
Yeah, I was taking art classes there, and having the conversations with my parents, and it's like, okay, well, so you're going to be a fine artist, huh? Good luck on that.
Yeah.
How are you going to put a roof over your head? Because
Yeah.
you're dependent on commissions and selling a few pieces at a gallery. And so, yeah, I think I was pretty clear from the early days that I need to have something that I could have a career out of. And it was the early days of kind of what we would call graphic design today. They were starting to offer classes at Portland State. We didn't really have computers yet. The Macintosh was just kind of coming around in the late '80s. And so it was a lot of hand press type and using rapidograph pens and French curves and um, just the old fashioned kind of craft of being a graphic designer. And, at the time I thought of graphic design meaning, oh, maybe I get a job being at an agency doing business cards or I don't know, catalog layouts or
Yeah.
magazine layouts,
Yeah.
you're like, I don't know. I had
Yeah.
no clue that there was a job out there of designing uniforms or doing t-shirts.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how it started.
That's wild. It's so early. Like this is where we overlap because I left high school, tried college, didn't work, so I went and worked for a bit, and then went to college, and then came to Nike. But you talk about tools, technical pens and curves and stuff. I can remember having one boss who kind of took me under his wings to show me how to do logos and stuff. But he left for lunch one day, and he goes, "Here's a technical pen. Here's a ruler. I want you to do 5 perfect lines."
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, how easy is that? Boom, knocks 5 out. He comes back from lunch. I'm just sitting here like, here we go. And he got out the little looking glass and looked at it, and he's like, dude, what the F were you drinking? Like these lines are like, and so you learn handcrafted back in the day. That was such a wild time. All those things and all the stuff that I'm sure at that stage, because I was still doing it when I came to Nike about 92, much of it was still hand built. It's really
Yeah.
wild.
And I had a teacher that was ruthless, but you needed that kind of critique from somebody to get better. But yeah, it was the same kind of thing. I mean, basically, kind of learning how to use those tools, and because you couldn't lean on a computer to clean it up,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Drake, what was your first gig at Nike? Sorry, what were you doing?
okay, well, there's a story in itself there.
Good.
So when I arrived, we talked about Angela Snow in the last episode. So she
Yeah.
hired me on as a freelancer, and they needed help basically doing the apparel catalogs. And so talking about using the tools, we had a couple of illustrators using rapidograph pins
Yeah.
and a light table, French curves, and they would pin up, a garment on
Yeah.
on the wall, and basically they would freehand draw it, I think probably with pencil, and then with the light table, they would redraw it with a pictograph.
Yep.
They would draw all the garments, flat line art, and then I would take those and we would have to create the catalog layouts on blueprint paper, and then we would make copies of, there'd be 6 colorways of this hoodie, 5 colorways of this short, blah, blah, blah. And then we would basically do all those layouts and then hand color them to show all the colorways. And so if you look at those catalogs from the late 80s, I mean, that was my first introduction to Nike. And it was a great way to just kind of learn the craft of being a graphic designer. And then I also was able to start working on some t-shirt graphics and gradually showing some of my talent in working actually on apparel graphics, and started getting assigned into Force, Flight, Air Jordan, some of the fitness collections and stuff.
Yeah. So were you doing you were doing the tees and stuff? Were you also doing like some of the brand marks and whatnot?
Well, it was kind of at the time we had the original Air Jordan logo and on apparel, and then the script Flight. And then, at the time they were like, well, let's do Flight, Force, and Air Jordan as 3 separate kind of collections for those 3 different athletes. And so there was kind of a time where we're like, okay, we need a new Flight logo that works on footwear, works on apparel. And those were the times where brand design would get assigned to work on it, and the apparel graphics group was working on it, and there was this little healthy friction, let's say, between the product people and the brand people, like who knows better, and we felt like, okay, well, we understand the needs for a logo that needs to go this small on a tongue of a shoe, or
embroidered, right? So
scale and application, embroidery, tackle twill, woven labels, all those kind of things. So, we had that sensibility, but obviously the brand people kind of knew kind of the outward face and external needs of marks. But either way, I worked on that Flight logo concept, and it was inspired by kind of aviation and speed, and ended up with that logo that's back there on that hat. And so that was my first kind of entree into the world of kind of brand identity. And then followed shortly after by worked on the Nike Premier logo as we were embarking on the Nike Premier football collection.
I got to say, so a kid that grew up playing basketball, loving basketball, that Flight logo, like that makes my heart beats a little bit to know you had your hands on that. Because before I came to Nike, this stuff was all just cool shit. It's just like, I don't know, I love it. And so now, like, your hands in the midst of that that's phenomenal. Like, it's so cool. So cool.
Yeah, thank you. That was good times. So as I jumped in from doing the catalog and learning the art and craft of that, it was a great time to learn just about being an apparel graphic designer. And, we had to do all of our film separations for any t-shirt graphics, so we had Ruby Lith and X-Acto knives, and we'd have to do all those, again, pre-computers. So we had a dark room where we do that. And then we also were, using the copier. I remember if we wanted to make some that felt like it was blurring or movement, we would move it on the copier real quick and then do a halftone, print of that and those kind of things. But just learning kind of the craft of being a graphic designer, and it was a wonderful time.
Yeah, super cool. Are there any tees that you remember that are like, I wish I still had that one?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, I've done a lot of eBay dives trying to find some of my stuff, and I do have some of my original work that I found years later. But that was hard to find some of those things now.
We'll put some of this stuff up on the site and on our Instagram when this episode goes live. Sweet. So that takes you through. Does this get you kind of through? I'm into Nike. I've got the U.S. deal, and now we're about to kick you to Europe.
Yeah, they had a group working over in Europe, a couple of apparel designers, and But at the time, I got assigned to work on Nike Premier Collection, which was for training and practice and kind of the foundation of Nike football. And since I grew up playing soccer, we had like Tom Andrich was working on tennis, and that was kind of his zone. We had like Ryan or Randy Hamer working in like basketball and that zone. And so I got naturally kind of assigned to work on Nike Premier. I created the logo, and then I just started kind of building a collection, working with the apparel designer on what it was going to look like. But we kind of had a blind spot, of course, because it was more focused on the European consumer, and
Yep.
so obviously it got to a point where like we need somebody there that's gonna be on the continent and to do it right. And so that's where I'd mentioned, Angela Snow and Mark Parker talked to me about moving over to Europe as an expat for a 2-year assignment and get over there and help set up shop over there. And at the time we were starting to get computers. We got our first Macintosh computers and just like opened a whole new world of graphic design. And so I was there at the cusp as we were getting those, and then moved over to Europe, and then it kind of blossomed from there.
Did you move to Europe before Nike's campus opened in
Yeah.
the U.S., or so you didn't even get a stint at Nike's new
It
campus?
was just under construction, like in probably 89, 90, and I moved over there, and so I never was on the campus when it opened.
So what was it like? So what was Europe like? Because if U.S. was scattered until the campus was built,
Yeah.
Europe must have been.
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of people maybe didn't know this, but when I arrived in 1990, the European apparel office was sharing, and the European headquarters was sharing an office with Nike Germany in a small building right off of the Autobahn outside Frankfurt. And it was like a 4 or 5 story building, and it's a long way from kind of what I had experienced, even though the campus wasn't there yet in Beaverton. You kind of had the semblance of here's what Nike, it's the homeland for it. And then you go over there, and it was, they had a few posters up that uh, represented Nike and there is no finish line and that kind of thing. But at the time, it was just kind of early days, and the design studio was a room, and I think we might have had a computer at the time and some art supplies, but that was it. And so the challenge was to kind of recreate what we needed in order to go into business there as a full-on studio, and so that meant my first several months was to go around and mind you, I didn't speak German. Luckily that a lot of Germans spoke English, that helped. But going to EGF, going to Ken, and going to various suppliers and hunting for basically the same equipment that we had. And luckily some of the equipment we had back in the States was German made or European made. And so we were there for till about 91, and then the decision was made to move to Hilversum in the Netherlands. And once again, then we had to move everything from that dark room and from our studio over to the new space over in Hilversum, where Nike decided to lease some office spaces there. And again, they don't, they're just open buildings. They didn't have any kind of Nike culture and no Nike feel. So it was up to us to kind of bring that into those spaces.
How many people were in Nike Europe at that time? Like how big was the crew when you were over there? Did it feel
Well,
like in general?
in apparel, I mean, we just had, I know Selma Tagan was
Yep.
kind of the lead for apparel kind of design and development.
Yeah.
John Notar was there.
Okay.
And we had a designer or two. I remember Kiersey and Sylvia Na were apparel designers there. I was the first graphic designer. So there was a little bit of a sales team and footwear support for the European consumer. I don't know, maybe about 20 people. Matt Wolf was the one that was leading that team. So it's probably 20 to 30 people.
That's
And,
amazing.
bunch of
Yeah.
Americans, but some of the locals as well.
Yeah, that is wild. How when did all the soccer stuff? When did working with teams and stuff kick in? Was that Germany and Hilversum, or was that more once you'd made the move?
Pretty much as soon as I arrived, Dortmund had already, and I'm not sure who designed the first kit for them. It was 1990, but brought the neon Volt yellow jersey to Dortmund. So that had already been done when I arrived. And then PSG was wearing Nike, and again, that before I arrived. And then Olympic Lyon, a French team, also was, we'd signed them. And so right away, it's like, okay, we need to get you over to Dortmund. We need to get you go to Paris and start working on these clubs. And so, I go with the apparel designer, and yeah, we start doing our research and totally, you know, immersed in that culture and figuring out what to do. And so that was job one from the beginning.
How old were you at that point?
When I got over there, so it was about 1990. So, it was like 27, 28 by the time I landed.
Sure.
So yeah, just a youngster.
Just set it up. Just set up a European organization and start meeting with our most important assets and figure their shit out. Like 27, 28-year-old kid from Tigard, Oregon, right? Yeah.
Let's go figure it out. Well, I told the story, and it probably just sounds so romantic to people these days because it's not like that anymore. But there's this kind of just do it spirit from
Yeah.
in the culture that permeated through it, and it was like, yeah, just you had people sent to Exeter to work on footwear, or sent over to Asia or to Europe, and it's like, yeah, just do it, just figure it out. We trust you. We respect what you bring to the table. You've kind of earned your stripes a little bit for a couple of years back in Beaverton. Now, yeah, I'll go over there and set that up. But felt empowering, and that they believed in you, and yeah, you weren't going to screw it up. But if you did, that you were going to hear about it. But at the same time, uncharted territory. So there wasn't like saying that, oh, this is what it has to look like. And so there was some freedom there, as long as it kind of represented the Nike brand, and did right by those clubs and those consumers. Then we were doing it right.
Awesome. So you're starting to work on clubs now. What were some of the clubs again?
Yeah, so Borussia Dortmund was the German club that we had, and we had a great partnership with them. With Volt yellow and black was pretty striking, and we ended up having Dortmund as our club through probably about 20, 25 years before somebody else signed them. But those early days, they're a great partner to work with. I think some of the early shirts were more a little bit of a brand expression of football, where I was taking the Nike Premier logo, and then I was creating these kind of soccer collage, and like back to the handmade kind of craft of being a designer, just using the tools at our disposal to kind of bring something new to the table. So the first several years were this kind of iconic pixelated blur of a soccer
Yep.
ball that were running down the sleeves and things
Yep.
like that for Dortmund. And then the more famous one was '94, where it was inspired by the eagle. Was the symbol of Dortmund. It was on their city flag, and so doing eagle wings down the sleeves of their shirt was pretty bold. In soccer at the time, long sleeves were kind of the go-to silhouette. Nowadays they're coming back, but back
Yeah.
then you had all that kind of real estate to work with as a graphic designer, going all the way down the sleeves. And then PSG at the time was they're still kind of finding their identity, and so we were using some of the same kind of effects with this pixelated kind of look in the sport, which again was compared to what we were doing in challenge court tennis and
Yeah.
and basketball and other areas. It was kind of a bold graphic kind of
Yeah.
time in the sport to be able to use sublimation and really
Yeah.
push it. And then eventually we landed on kind of a blue shirt with a Hechter red stripe down the center, and that became PSG's kind of identity going forward.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And your beloved Arsenal kicked into the mix there at some point, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so we started outfitting Arsenal in 94. So I went over there with our team probably in 92, 93 to get our first kind of look at that club and wander around the grounds of Highbury where they played and see where they trained and see their trophy cases and just kind of dig into what makes Arsenal the club they are. They'd been, uh, a club for probably 80 years at that point, and again, how do we bring something fresh and new? And I think what you'll see in my story and your story is, there's not one template, there's not one formula. The only formula is to kind of reveal something about that club and do right by them and bring something fresh to the industry. But it wasn't like a cookie cutter thing like, oh, this is how you do a Dortmund, so
Yeah.
that's how we do Arsenal. You got to dig into each one and then have that sensibility as you're creating the design to leverage those elements that make that English football club, different than that German football club.
Yeah. That's that's so cool. I always talk about when like younger folks are asking about some of the stuff. I always just kind of say more than designing jerseys or uniforms or whatever, we were trying to tell stories, right? Like we were trying to find something about a team or a coach or a player that had a little bit of magic and then turn that into a story to go, if that story were in the shape of this shoe or that shirt or that jersey or whatever, how might that come to life? Which is a completely different deal. And I think it also, I believe, like I can see it in the work that you've done. I think, through most of Nike's era, it just kind of keeps us honest, right? It keeps us making things that I remember one of the trips with the guys from the NFL when we'd signed the deal with the NFL. At the end of the week, he's like, "This has been the best week I've ever had on the road." I didn't expect it because I thought you Nike guys were all going to be dicks. But he's like, all we talked about was how we make sport better.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't we do this? And how about that? Oh my God, that's an amazing story. He goes, everybody else we travel with is like, well, why wouldn't we? Like, we can't afford that trim, or we shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think what you're touching on is the heart of what made those years, especially at Nike, so special, right? And our impact on teams and our ability to do that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that I learned pretty quickly over in Europe was um, each year, each season, the team had to have a new kit. And where I came from, pretty much, the Blazers uniform kind of evolved over time, but Chicago Bears, Pittsburgh Steelers, New York Yankees, I mean, those clubs, that's uniform ain't going to change, and
Yeah.
so you kind of were going over in Europe, and that was a little bit different formula where it was like, okay, yeah, it has to look similar and within these kind of guardrails for a Dortmund or a Arsenal. But we need to sell 100,000 of these or whatever and give people a reason to go buy another kit the next year. It couldn't
Yeah.
just be like we're gonna just carry over the same shirt over and over. And so with that challenge though, means okay, well, what are we reviewing this season, but what do we have our eyes on for the next season and that kind of thing. And so yeah, that was the excitement of it, is to figure out what is right for this, first launch, and then how are we going to follow it up.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, this is what an amazing period of time, and the teams that you worked on have had such an impact on the aesthetic and the energy of sport. I mean, that's amazing. We definitely have to do an episode that is like, we'll get these 4 or 5 or 6 teams. We'll just break it down and have you walk us through that stuff. I'm excited to learn from that too. I've seen all the stuff. I know a little bit, but I haven't gotten the complete peel it back. Where did this come from, and why does it look that way? So I'll be interested in hearing that for sure.
Yeah.
So what comes after that chapter for you?
Well, so then things started just accelerating, and we signed PSV Eindhoven, a Dutch team, which was down the road from Amsterdam area where we were working out of at the time. We signed Nigeria in '95, and it was kind of a quick turn, and they weren't going to send us down to Nigeria to go any deeper on kind of the uniform direction. So we just made the decision to take the Dortmund Wings jersey and apply it onto Nigeria. And that was because Nigeria was known as the Super Eagles, and their logo, the crest had an eagle on it. So it's like, okay, well, this is a perfect fit for them. And we were very conscious of, we don't want to use jerseys on one club and share with another. And so it felt like, okay, we're going to flip the colors and do right by each of them and not make it feel like we're kind of recycling or any of that kind of stuff. So we wanted to be sensitive to that. But I think it still turned out good in the Nigeria colors. And for the next year, for 96, we were able to have a little more time to develop a concept and do our research. And so that kit was inspired by the Nigerian flag, which had, just a simple green with a white center stripe on the flag. And then playing off kind of African art and culture with some of the trim details and the jacquard. And then what was kind of radical about that shirt is traditionally always the crest for the team is on their left chest. And we decided to do kind of a full front Nigeria word mark with the eagle above it pulled it out from their mascot, and then put the crest on the sleeve. And so, they thought it was great. They loved that we were taking chances. I think their spirit and their approach to football was their style of play just is such a different personality. And so I think it was a great kind of connection with Nike's uniform and their style of play. And they went on to win Olympic gold that year and became kind of the darling of the Olympics with their brash style of play. And I think they beat Argentina in the final or on the semifinal. So, again, you have these traditional powers that were getting beat by this upstart team. And that's just a Nike story right there. We've always been kind of the underdog and the upstart. And so that was amazing.
In the right spot. Even as we became big, it was still that attitude, that challenger attitude was so great. Yeah, man. And what a great name, the Super Eagles. Like, that's a freaking awesome
Super
team
Eagles.
name.
Yeah. And then we signed Italy after that. Amazing history in the world of football. They'd won 3 World Cups previously. And at the time, Nike had signed Paolo Maldini, a famous defender for the Italian team, and he played for AC Milan. And he was wearing our Tiempo boots and appearing in a lot of our advertising at the time. So got to meet him and spend time with the Italian Federation. And I think we did some amazing kits at the time. The first shirt that we did was really utilizing the jacquard to its fullest with an engineered kind of front graphic, where I created this like a medallion kind of feel that had the 3 stars in it, kind of a classic Italian shield. And then it just had like gold trim details and that were based off the gold that was in the crest. And overall, the thing just was like, you could see Versace kind of drooling looking at it, just because it just felt like a cool Italian shirt. And I think that shirt is still pretty beloved. But the next year, we did a major pivot in the world of football, and that's because we brought in dry fit. And first time we really were using performance fabrications. Up till then, we'd kind of been doing basically one jersey for the fan and for the player. And we were pretty forgiving with the silhouette. It was pretty wide, and we were thinking, hey, this has to work for the guy that's up in the stadium sitting in the seats, as well as the player. And we didn't have 2 versions. But when we started bringing in dry fit and mesh insets and looking at cooling features for the athlete and more of a silhouette that was right for the athlete first. Time had come, but that brought kind of performance into the industry. And again, Nike was kind of there first, I think. And so that was kind of a major part of the Italy story in those early days.
I think it's the same window, if I'm not mistaken, about when we figured out in the US how to have like pro mesh, like basketball for, I remember, I think for North Carolina was one of the first ones where we could get what was the Dazzle, the Shimmer Sheen, the micro mesh, and then effectively the pro mesh into dry fit standards, right?
Yeah.
Which was a push. So I think that was a big, clearly that was a big kind of 24-month window for Nike apparel
Yeah.
stepping up on the world stage.
Yeah, I mean, ThermaFit, ClimaFit, Dry Fit, were kind of the staples in the whole fit umbrella. And then, like you're saying, some of the performance fabrications and, pushing our vendors that had been kind of in that traditional space for decades, and finding new vendors that were willing to kind of go there with us and try some new things for the sake of the athlete.
Super cool. So here, let me do this real quick. I'm taking notes. When we have a football or soccer episode where we go through this stuff, right now I've written down, we need to talk about Arsenal, Dortmund, Nigeria, and Italy for sure. Is there another one you'd put on that list?
I mentioned PSV Eindhoven, and when we signed 1860, there was a little chapter where we signed rugby teams. We had Ireland rugby in that kind of mid-90s era. We also had a French rugby team, Toulouse. But yeah, we were kind of just building up that team sports thing.
Yeah.
By the time I was, called home, let's say, in '96.
Yeah.
So, and then I kind of mentioned before that I had the opportunity to go and present at the board meeting in Atlanta at the Super Show. Super Show used to be this huge thing at the Omni or the Dome. No, the Georgia Dome, I think.
Atlanta. Yeah.
Before it got torn down. So they had the Super Show there, and Nike's board of directors was there for that show, and they brought me and the apparel designer and a couple other of my colleagues, product managers from Europe, and our job was to present to the board of directors, here's what's going on in Nike football. And so, again, these are the days we had leather black folio that was filled with foam core boards. We're schlepping it through security at the airport, and they want to open it up. We're like, no, you can't see this stuff. And we wanted to basically present to the board, here's what we're doing in Dortmund, here's what we're doing in Arsenal, Italy, blah, blah, blah. And show them, like, this is a whole new world of sport that Nike had just been dabbling in, but needed to invest in more heavily. And so soon after that, they started opening the checkbooks, and we signed the U.S. team. We signed Brazil, Netherlands. We were in the Major League Soccer in the U.S. Was a big investment. And so, the world of football became like one of the major areas of investment for Nike.
Dude, what a cool deal. So what happened? You said you just mentioned a minute ago, you got called home. Come back. We want you here. What was that story, and what's the transition, and how'd you feel about it?
I was just hoping they forgot about me, But no, I can see, after 6 years, I mean, our company had grown up. You'd arrived, our design studio and organization had quadrupled, and I probably honestly lost touch with kind of what Nike brand stood for in the U.S. I just didn't have as much visibility to it. So much had changed, and so it was inevitable that it was that I was going to be called home, and so they brought Kurt Parker over to replace me.
Yeah.
And then eventually, actually, Angela Snow came over a year or two later. She had been over actually in Hong Kong and taking care of Asia over there. But I came back to Beaverton, and they're like, who's this guy? So they're like, well, let's have him work on some T-shirts, I guess, that kind of thing. So it was just a little bit of a year transition to just keep my feet under me back in Beaverton.
Yeah.
And then eventually they're like, well, this guy has worked on team for 6 years, and we've got some assets in the world of basketball and with the universities and stuff. So let's have them go over in OTS, organized team sports. And so I think that's where our story connects right then.
Yeah. What was and so Todd was probably creative director of Todd Van Horn was probably creative director of OTS at the time. So we hadn't switched from organized team
might have,
sports to Nike team sports, I
he
think.
might have
Yeah.
just been a teammate, another designer. I don't know if he was director by then. I
Okay.
a little fuzzy, but I think we were all kind of joining that team and
Yeah.
figuring out. But obviously you'd been there already, so you probably know a little bit more about how the organization was by the time
Yeah.
I jumped into it.
So I think, yeah. So in the beginning, we were kind of a free for all. We had, like, on the apparel side, we didn't really have a basketball designer. Martha Moore was on it for those first few teams. And
Yeah,
then David Turner and Randy Hamer were doing a lot of the football stuff. And then
yeah,
David Turner kind of became, because he was a apparel designer, kind of de facto leader. And the
yeah,
David's amazing. We both know David really well, and
yeah.
he's a brilliant, brilliant designer. But I got to tell you, the number of Fridays that I would end up in his office with him shouting at me, "Well, I didn't ask to be your fucking boss anyway." It was like over and over. It's like,
Uh,
okay, David, okay, we got it. And so there was a point at which David's like, "Look, I just want to design. I don't want to lead. I don't want to lead people." And he's not wired to lead people, but he's completely wired to make, like, amazing apparel innovations. And they brought Todd Van Horn over, who had hired me into sport graphics earlier. So Todd came in. Gosh, I want to say that he was there in some capacity while we were working on the Broncos stuff, which would have been 96-ish, maybe 96, early 97.
yeah.
So it might have been right about when they were kind of trying to figure out how to invest more in team sports and stuff. So you're a ringer that they would want. That makes sense for them to want you in that mix too.
Well, and it's funny you
So,
mentioned Martha Moore. She was the apparel designer that I worked closely with on Dortmund,
oh
PSG,
my gosh, I had no
over in
idea.
Europe. And so we were so tight. She lived over in Europe for several years. And then, so it's funny you mentioned, so I don't know when she left Europe, but I think it was before I did. And she joined, the team area with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that would have been about the overlap. And then, so you came in, you got some pretty cool teams to work on.
Yeah, I got assigned to Kansas and Kentucky basketball, who Nike had recently signed around 95, 97, I think. And then also NFL, we had I think 8 or 10 teams. And so I worked on the Raiders and the Bears and the Jaguars, and you worked on several too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was
Dude, your beloved Raiders.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some great stories we can unpack about that, but
Yeah.
definitely putting my skill set to use, and what I
Yeah.
loved about working on team and applying it onto basketball and NFL.
Yeah, that's killer. I saw you posted something the other day about the Bears, some of the work you did on the Bears,
Yeah,
which is very cool. It's fun to see, isn't it fun to see a lot of those decisions that we made back then still living, like, in some form?
yeah.
They're still relevant, they're connected. Yeah, very cool.
Well, and I mean it's crazy because in the world of football now, Adidas has Arsenal, and
Yeah.
they can't help but pull things from that era of the little lightning bolt
Yeah.
details and bring it into their current uniforms, because that's part of Arsenal's heritage and identity. So I don't blame
Yeah.
them for doing that. And then Borussia Dortmund, some of the key directions with the Volt Yellow. I mean, Puma just relaunched a Volt Yellow shirt for a special game for Dortmund. So yeah, some of those key elements that we did in global football and basketball and NFL, you still see today in those uniforms that they're wearing current day.
Puma might have used your Volt, but they didn't execute well on that print or the graphic that they used across those shoulders. You could see the reference and what they're trying to do, a little bit of an homage, but not particularly effective there. So, for what that's worth, yeah.
Well, I'll just finish by saying I was just trying to be positive, take the high road, and like any of us that are in this business, whoever the brand they work for, I mean, we're kind of a
Yeah.
brotherhood, sisterhood of
Yeah.
like-minded individuals that love the sport and are trying to do right by those clubs and teams. So
Right.
I think I love talking to people that have worked on other brands and other teams and hearing their story. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. We're coming up on time a little bit here, but I want to make sure that we get the kind of the rest of your arc. So What else should we know about the how your career, continued to shape, how you began to lead and mentor and move into some different roles to really influence designers?
Yeah, I feel like in my 37 years, one company, I had like 10 or 12 different careers, which was awesome. So, I worked in the team sports area. And then after that, I ended up working, they asked me to do some branded headwear. So I was figuring out how to be a designer, working on caps and beanies and that whole world, and how to develop those products, and going over to Asia and figure out all those different new silhouettes and those kind of things.
Was that when Sports Specialties was part of the deal?
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
Nike signed Sports Specialties, so
Yeah.
I worked closely with them, and they were doing a lot of the licensed product for baseball and
Yeah.
football, that they held licenses. New Era had the NFL for the sideline, but Sports Specialties had some of the sideline and other lifestyle kind of headwear that they were allowed to do. Yeah, so I worked in headwear, and then I even decided, well, I'm going to try being a PLM, a product line manager. So I jumped out of design for a brief time over in as a headwear PLM, working with the Sports Specialties team. And this became kind of a darker chapter of my career, because I got laid off in 2001. And then 9/11 happened later that year. The economy went sour. I was basically on the outside of Nike trying to get back in, and was able to get hired on within about a year in footwear. So I jumped from apparel. All my career had been in apparel at the time, and headwear, into the world of footwear, which is kind of the tail that wags the dog, or whatever they say in Nike. But learning that whole craft of being a color designer in footwear, and using some of my graphic and researching and trend, understanding of trends and that kind of thing in footwear. And then eventually in 2009, I moved out of kind of being the creative in design and into operations, and being a design manager and studio director, and kind of spent the latter half of my career helping design in kind of a different way, and supporting teams and managing, just making sure that we were working effectively. So, yeah, I had a lot of different journeys and little directions that I took in my career at Nike.
Super cool. I think most of us who've had any period of time at Nike can go like 2 to 3 year chunks that like line up. I love the full arc of being that entrepreneur, a little bit of a pirate, a little bit of a sailor and explorer and sent
Yeah,
out, and then the back around on the other side where you're in a position to shepherd and help younger generations who know how to design, but they didn't have to live off the land like we did, right?
yeah,
Computer like punches everything out. We don't have to do it by hand. I don't have to, hey, everything's here. I walk in and my desk is fully, like everything's in the drawer that I need.
yeah,
And you're like, we had a big empty room. I had to like figure out how to get a camera or how to do whatever I had to do, right? And so I
yeah.
think, to me, it's such a cool career, with what you came up, the things you've made, the impact you've made on sport, the history that so many people are still attached to and in love with, and then your ability to craft and help another generation understand what it takes to get that done, I think is just super cool. So, I mean, congrats on just a freaking kick-ass career. And to
Thank you.
do it at one place is, especially the best sports brand on the freaking planet. It's amazing, dude.
Yeah, I've had a wonderful life and career there, and I appreciated every moment of it, and learned a lot, and made me who I am today.
Any last word as you kind of look back on stuff that you'd leave folks with? Anything you learned or anything you kind of lived by that you would say, if there's something I got from these 37 years in my arc.
Yeah, I know. I just say, yeah. I mean, I think all along the journey, it was like do right by the athlete, do right by the club, the sport, and I think you mentioned the word honesty, the word curiosity is key to our success, and innovation. All those kind of buzzwords. But yeah, we were gonna settle. We were gonna just do what everybody else does. We were gonna bring something fresh that we thought was appropriate and why not? It hadn't been done, but that didn't stop us.
That's amazing, Drake. Hey, it's been a privilege to be able to hear your story and walk this with you. I'm excited for a session that we have where you're just going through some of the teams that you worked on. Like, that's going to be fun. Like, we'll really get into the design of all that stuff, which will be great. So thanks for sharing. Hopefully you don't have the shakes. You don't have to go like decompress, but go hit the pitch and work it out a little bit. So I just love Drake's story. From entrepreneurial designer to legendary design leader and mentor within an incredible company at a truly amazing time in Nike's history. It's so good. And we've got much more to talk about with Drake on the subject of soccer kits in upcoming episodes, so make sure that you check back in. And check out our Substack page or Instagram for more tidbits and insights on the Designasty. And while you're at it, sign up on our Substack page if you want to receive updates on future episodes and additional stories of Nike team sports that you won't hear here in this podcast. Thanks for listening.